Yeah. Excuse me. I'm gonna make this one part 5. I'm talking about Seth and Enoch. I'm quoting from Patriarchs and Prophets. Patriarchs and Prophets. That's what I'm quoting from. And it's written by Ellen G. White. I'll keep it there long enough to where you can see it. Okay, let me see how much more I can get in. It says, to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Then began men to call upon the name of Jehovah. In other words, that is something very significant about that. You know, we said then began men to call upon the name of the Lord, and we know that had to be for it had to be a reason why that happened. Because when you look at it, you can think about, okay, when people going through trials and tribulations or whatever, because you know, like they say, I never had children before, but you know, a lot of people does. And when you have children, it's like you children is a lot. For some instance, they some people would say that there are a lot of problems. It brings a lot of more weight. It brings a lot. You have to. It's a lot of more work that you have to put into. You all know what I'm talking about. I mean, you know what I'm saying. Those of you who are parents, you can better relate to that much more. You know what I mean. It's a big responsibility, and so because of that, those circumstances, it causes us in some instances to want to turn to God. It says, before the fall, our first parents had kept the Sabbath, which was instituted in Eden, and after their expulsion from paradise, they continued its observance. They had tasted the fruits of disobedience, and had learned what everyone that tramples upon God's commandments will sooner or later learn, that the divine precepts are sacred and inaudible, and that the penalty of transgression will surely be inflicted. The Sabbath was honored by all the children of Adam that remained loyal to God, but Cain and his descendants did not respect the day upon which God had rested. They chose their own time for labor and for rest, regardless of Jehovah's express command. Upon receiving the curse of God, Cain had withdrew from his father's household. He had first chosen his occupation as a till of the soil. That means that in the ground he was like a gardener. It says, and he now founded a city, calling it after the name of his eldest son. He had gone out from the presence of the Lord, cast away the promise of the restored Eden, to seek his possessions and enjoyment in the earth under the curse of sin, thus standing at the head of that great class of men who worship the God of this world, and that which pretends to mere earthly and material progress. His descendants became distinguished, but they were regardless of God and the opposite to his purpose for man, to the crime of murder, in which Cain had led away Lamech, the fifth in descent, and also I don't know what that word is, proligmity or whatever, and boastfully default. He acknowledged God only to draw from the average of Cain an assurance of his own safety. Abel had a pastoral life, dwelling in tents of booths, and the descendants of Seth following the same course, continuing themselves strangers and pilgrims on the earth, seeking a better country that is in heaven. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 13 through 16. For some time the two classes remained separated. The race of Cain spread from the place of their first statement, dispersed over the plants and valleys which the children of Seth had dwelt. In the latter, In order to escape from their contamination, in order to escape from their contaminated influence, withdrew to the mountains and there made their home. So long as this separation continued, they maintained the worship of God and its purity. But in the lapse of time, they ventured little by little to mingle with the inhabitations of their thus associating was providential of the worst results. The sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair. The children of Seth were attracted by the beauty of the daughters of Cain's descendants, displeasing the Lord by intermarrying with them. Many of the worshippers of God were beguiled into sin by the allurements that were now constantly before them, and they lost their peculiar holy character. Mingling with the depraved, they became like them in spirit and deeds, and the restrictions of the seventh commandment was disregarded, and they took them wives of all which they had chosen. The children of Seth went in the way of Cain. The children of Seth. So Seth had children. And Seth had Enos, and so Adam and Eve had Seth, and Seth had a son named Enos, which was Adam's grandson. Okay, it said the children of Seth went into the way of Cain. Jude 11. They fixed their minds upon worldly prosperity and enjoyment, and neglected the commandments of the Lord. Man did not like to retain God in their knowledge. They became vain in their imagination, and their foolish heart was darkened. Romans chapter 1:21. Therefore God gave them over to a mind of void of judgment. Verses 28 margin. Sin spread abroad, and each like a deadly leprosy. That is what sin does, according. Okay, it said, for nearly 1,000 years Adam lived among men, a witness to the results of sin. Faithfully he sought to stem the tide of evil. He had been commanded to instruct his prosperity in the way of the Lord, and he carefully treasured what God had revealed to him, and repeated it to succeeding generations. That means, it said, for nearly 1,000 years Adam lived among men, a witness to the results of sin. Faithfully he sought to stem the tide of evil. He had been commanded to instruct his prosperity in the way of the Lord, and he carefully treasured what God had revealed to him, and repeated it to succeeding generation. That means he taught each one of his children to do the right thing. To his children and children's children, to the 9th generation, he describes men's holy and happy estate in paradise, and repeated the history of his fall, telling them of the suffering by which God had taught him. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop right here because I got to get up out of here. So thank you all for watching, and thank you for listening, and I will be back with another live edition of another episode. And the things that I'm uploading here, I'm going to take and upload them on my first account. Alright.